very soft, rhythmic, and soothing. There is a language spoken not with words, but with silence and steady hands. It's the language of needles and thread, of fabric that yields to patience, of creations born in the deepest hours of the night. My name is Afia Bakari, and this is my story. It begins, as all true stories do, not with a shout, but with a single, careful stitch. For 40 years, my sewing machine was my companion, my confessor, and my provider. After my husband Kofi passed, leaving me with a 6-year-old girl named Zuri and a world of silence, that machine became our anchor. Its hum was the soundtrack to our survival. I sewed wedding dresses for strangers, mourning clothes for the grieving, and school uniforms for children, my fingers dancing to feed my own child's dreams. My hands became maps of this labor, fine lines, small scars, a permanent slight curve to my fingers. But in every callus I saw Zuri's full plate at dinner. In every ache I saw her tuition paid. The dream was simple. One day I would sew my daughter's wedding gown, not because I had to, but because I could pour a lifetime of silent love into every seam. When Zuri, now a polished, ambitious woman living a world away from our humble apartment, finally got engaged, I offered this gift with a trembling heart. She hesitated, then agreed. I took it as an olive branch, a fragile thread back to the little girl who once thought my homemade dresses were magic. I worked as if under a sacred vow. I chose ivory silk I could barely afford. I used tiny, luminous pearls a client had once given me in lieu of payment. For the inner lining, I cut a small, heart-shaped piece from my own simple wedding dress, the one Kofi had saved for 2 years to buy me, and stitched it in secret. It was my way of walking her down the aisle, even if she no longer wanted to hold my hand. The final stitch was placed as dawn brushed the sky. The gown lay across my table, pure and soft in the morning light. It didn't scream with opulence, it whispered of devotion. I carried it to her modern loft, wrapped in a clean old sheet. The scene inside was like a glossy magazine. Laughing friends, designer shoes, the sharp, expensive scent of ambition. Zuri was at the center, beautiful and unfamiliar. "Is that it?" she asked, her voice cutting through the chatter. I unfolded the dress, my heart in my throat. Her eyes, once so full of wonder, performed a cold, swift assessment, then the sneer. "This looks like something a poor person would wear." The words hung, sharp as scissors. Before the ache could even reach my heart, she snatched the gown from my hands and tossed it into the stainless steel kitchen trash bin. The sound was a dull, final thud. "I'm not getting married dressed like a seamstress, Mom." The air turned to glass. I could see the giggles of her friends, the pity in their eyes. I did not scream. I did not weep. I simply turned, gathered the shattered fragments of my pride from her polished floor, and walked out. The sun outside was brutal, but I felt a cold so deep it settled in my bones. That walk home was a funeral procession. I mourned the mother I had been, the daughter I thought I knew, and a lifetime of quiet love that had just been declared worthless. At home, I sat before my old Singer machine. I placed my hand on its cold metal, and from the ashes of my grief, something else rose. Not anger, but a crystalline, terrifying calm. A resolution as strong as the toughest thread. Days bled into silence. No call came. Only through whispers did I learn of the exquisite imported Parisian gown now hanging in her closet, a dress with a price, but no pulse. A week later, driven by a force I didn't understand, I found myself using my old key to her empty loft. The air was stale with perfume and neglect, and there in the corner was the trash can. I reached in. My fingers touched cold coffee grounds, crumpled paper, and then the softness of silk. I pulled my dress from the tomb they'd made for it. It was stained with coffee, smelled of discarded things, but it was intact, just like me. I took it home, laid it on my work table, and studied it under the lamplight. The love was still there, trapped in the threads, waiting. This dress's story was not over. My story was not over. What followed were weeks of silent, fierce creation. I became a woman possessed. I worked only by night. I sold the last pieces of my good jewelry, Kofi's final gifts, to buy Swarovski crystals and the finest French lace. I didn't just repair the dress, I reincarnated it. Every crystal I sewed to the bodice was a tear I refused to shed in public. Every intricate floral pattern I embroidered along the hem was a dream I'd once had for us. I wove resilience into the tulle, dignity into the seams. The simple gown became a masterpiece of light and shadow, a testament to what can be rebuilt from ruin. The final wedding day dawned gray and heavy. I dressed with deliberate care in my one good cream-colored suit. I placed the transformed gown, now radiating a subdued, powerful magic, in a plain linen garment bag. This was not a peace offering. It was a truth, carefully folded. The Grand Magnolia Ballroom was a spectacle of cold glamour. I was a ghost there. Zuri, in her lavish, soulless lace, was a stunning stranger. I was ushered to the back, offered polite, distant smiles. I was the help, the mother from the wrong side of the life she'd built. I watched. I saw the perfect, empty performance. I saw her laugh without her eyes crinkling, the way they did as a child. And in that moment, any last hope dissolved, leaving only clear, cold purpose. As the clock neared midnight and the champagne made them mercifully unobservant, I walked to the center of the dance floor. The music faltered. Conversations died. 100 eyes turned to me, the unexpected stain on their perfect evening. Zuri's face froze. "Mom," she hissed, a strained smile plastered on her face. "I only came to return something that belongs to me." And my voice, to my own surprise, was steady and carried to the back of the room. I unzipped the bag and let the gown spill out into the light. A collective gasp sucked the air from the ballroom. This was no poor person's dress. It was a constellation of light and craftsmanship. The crystals caught every chandelier beam, scattering rainbows across the stunned faces. The lace seemed to breathe. It was utterly, devastatingly magnificent. What is this?" Zuri stammered, the color draining from her face. "Very soft, rhythmic, and soothing." "Your dress, Zuri," I said, holding it high so all could see. "The one you threw away. It was sewn not with money, but with nights I didn't sleep. With years I chose you over everything. Every thread here is a story you forgot. Every stitch has my name on it." She took a step back, her hands flying to her mouth. Her new husband reached for her, but she shook him off. Her eyes locked on the ghost of her contempt, now resurrected in glory. "I didn't come for your apology tonight," I continued, the room so silent you could hear the rustle of silk. "I came so you would remember, in front of everyone who matters to you, where you come from. Humility is not a stain, daughter. Forgetting is." Then a sound I didn't expect. Applause. It started from the back, from the waitstaff who had been quietly watching. Then a bridesmaid, her eyes wet. Then another guest. It wasn't loud or jubilant. It was a deep, respectful rumble of understanding, a salute to the undeniable truth of craftsmanship and soul. Zuri crumbled, not dramatically, but inwardly, as if her very spine had turned to sand. She sank into a chair, her face hidden in her hands. her expensive dress suddenly looking like a costume. I did not go to her. I had given my lesson. I carefully placed the gown back into its bag, zipped it shut with a final, soft sound, and turned. I walked out of the ballroom, down the long, quiet hallway, and into the liberating chill of the night. The applause faded behind me, replaced by the sound of my own heartbeat, strong and steady. But my friends, that night was not an ending. It was a seam ripper, pulling apart the tightly woven fabric of our lives to reveal older, hidden patterns. The story of a dress was just the surface thread. The next morning, my quiet apartment felt different. It felt like mine again. I was hanging the glorious gown in my window, where the sun could dance with the crystals, when the knock came. It was Zuri, not the polished icon from the ballroom, but a pale, swollen-eyed woman in yesterday's clothes. She looked like the child who used to climb into my bed after a nightmare. "Can I come in?" she whispered. I nodded. She didn't speak for a long time. She just stared at the dress, now bathed in morning light. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," she finally said, her voice raw. "I was blind." "You were looking with the wrong eyes," I replied, not unkindly. "The notes," she blurted out, tears falling. "I found the notes in the lining." Ah, the secret letters. In my fever of recreation, I had sewn tiny folded papers into the inner seams, words I could never say aloud. "When you took your first step, I sewed a stronger hem into my own life. The blue fabric of your first recital dress is in this lace. I love you more than you will ever need, and that is enough." She had torn the dress apart after the wedding, in a fury of shame and confusion, and found them. She had read every one. "You loved me that much, and I treated you like a servant." "The truth," I said, pouring her tea the way I used to, "is often hidden in the lining. It's meant to be found by those willing to look beneath the surface." That visit was the first thread of a new, fragile mending. Zuri started coming by, not to talk, but to sit, to watch me work. One afternoon, she picked up a scrap of fabric and a needle. Her hands, accustomed to keyboards and touchscreens, were clumsy. She pricked her finger, and a single drop of blood bloomed on the ivory silk. She looked at it, then at me, and something passed between us, an understanding that some things require a literal piece of yourself. It was during these quiet afternoons that the past decided to speak. It came in the form of Imani Ellington, Zuri's formidable mother-in-law, the woman who had looked through me at the wedding. She requested a meeting, with surprising humility. We met in a quiet cafe. She was elegant, but her eyes held a nervousness that no amount of wealth could mask. "You don't remember me, Afia, but I remember you, from the tailoring shop on Elm Street, 30 years ago." A memory surfaced, a young, haughty woman complaining about a hem, refusing to pay the full amount. "I was cruel," Imani said, the words costing her. "I inherited my mother's pride and her cruelty. I have carried the shame of how I treated you, and others like you, for decades. Seeing you at that wedding, holding that dress, it was a mirror I could not avoid." She wanted to make amends, not with empty words, but with an offer, to fund a proper studio for me, a place to teach, to create. I was silent for a long time. "Why now?" I asked. Her composure cracked. "Because your husband, Kofi, he worked for our family too, before you married." The world narrowed. Kofi? He was a good man, too good. He saw the way we treated people. He tried to intervene once, for you. It cost him his job. I never told you. I was too much of a coward. She slid a sealed, yellowed envelope across the table. "He left this with my father to be given to you if anything happened to him. We never did." My hands trembled holding the envelope.
his handwriting after all these years. It was not a love letter, it was a confession of his powerlessness, of his shame at not being able to give me more, and at the end a line that shattered and rebuilt me simultaneously. My greatest pride is not anything I built, but the woman I married who can build beauty from nothing. Look after our Zuri. Teach her that the strongest thread is integrity and it cannot be bought. The revelation was a seismic shock that settled into a new foundation. With Imani's capital, not as charity but as restitution, and Kofi's blessing from the past, Hope Studio was born. It wasn't just a business, it was a sanctuary. Women from all walks of life came, young single mothers, retirees with shaky hands, teenagers wanting to learn a skill their textbooks didn't teach. They brought broken zippers, torn prom dresses, and dreams that felt too fragile to hold.
Very soft, rhythmic, and soothing. I taught them to sew, yes, but more, I taught them to mend, to see the potential in the torn, the value in the faded. Zuri became my most ardent apprentice, her once critical eyes now learning to see the poetry in a straight seam. One afternoon, as we sorted through a donation of vintage fabrics, Zuri found a small wooden spool at the bottom of a box. Wound around it was a single continuous length of vibrant crimson thread. "It's beautiful," she said, holding it up. "What would you use red thread for in a wedding dress?" I took the spool. A memory, long dormant, stirred. My mother used to say, "Red thread is for sewing the things you can't see, the broken promises, the silent hopes, the invisible ties that bind." I looked at her. "It's for mending the soul." That red thread became our studio's symbol. Every student, upon finishing their first project, would add a single small stitch of red thread somewhere hidden in their work, a secret signature of resilience. The studio thrived. It became a tapestry of stories, and life, in its gentle way, began to weave a new pattern for us. Zuri's marriage, built on shaky ground of superficiality, could not withstand the earthquake of truth. It ended quietly. She moved into the apartment above the studio, her laughter once again echoing in my days, different now, wiser. Years softened the sharp edges of our past. The glorious dress now hangs in a place of honor at the studio, not as a monument to pain, but as a testament to transformation. Women touch it for luck, for inspiration. And just last week, my granddaughter, Nia, Zuri's daughter, sat at a child-sized sewing machine we bought for her. Her small brow was furrowed in concentration as she guided a piece of cloth under the needle. On her wrist, tied in a simple bracelet, was a length of that same red thread. She looked up at me, her eyes bright. "Grandma, is it true that every stitch is a story?" I smiled, the old familiar warmth filling my chest. "Yes, my love, and you are just beginning to sew yours." And so the wheel turns. The hum of the machine becomes a lullaby. The sharp needle a tool of creation, not pain. The red thread connects us, mother to daughter, teacher to student, past to future, in an unbroken line of strength. Let the rhythm of a steady stitch soothe your mind. Imagine the gentle pull of thread through cloth, a mindful, repetitive motion that mends not just fabric, but the spirit. Each breath in, like drawing thread, each breath out, like a stitch placed. The story is told. The love that was scorned became a legacy. The tears watered a garden of hope. And in this quiet space, you can rest, knowing that even the most torn places can be made whole again, with patience, with care, with an unwavering thread of love. Feel the peace of the finished work, the calm of creation complete. Allow your thoughts to settle like bits of thread on a quiet floor. Let your body grow heavy, your breathing deep and even, carried into sleep on the soft, strong wings of a story well told. Good night.